Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining us for this tackle height law trial information session. All the information we're talking about today can be found online. We're just going to be talking about some of the detail, giving a bit further explanation about some of the trials and some of the rationale, and we'll circulate obviously details as we close in on next season. We'll be providing lots of video examples and support to coaches, match officials, parents, spectators, etc. Joined today by James Wade, Senior Game Development Manager in the Game Development team, and Sinclair Patience, Game Development Manager from Caledonia North. It's great to have you guys on board. So, overview. The maximum tackle height for season 23-24 will be below sternum. So your sternum is this big bone in the middle of your chest, which ends just above your belly, and in my case, it's quite prominent. And that's going to be where the tackle height, the maximum tackle height, will be. And that's obviously quite a significant difference from where we have at the moment, which is the shoulder. And we're going to talk about the rationale for that in a moment. But below sternum is the tackle height. You'll have noticed in the news that other unions are looking at this, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But certainly the phrase belly tackle has the phrase that New Zealand have coined, and that's going to be something that we're going to focus on as well, as belly tackle and below. The intended impact of lowering the tackle height is to reduce the volume of head-on-head contacts. So having the ball carrier and tackler upright in a tackle situation will cause that head-on-head contact, and ultimately that will lead to concussions and potentially both players being concussed. So the trial, the intended impact is to reduce those situations and ultimately reduce the volume of concussions in our game. It's also anticipated, and this has been found through other trials, is that the rate of offloads and ball and play time and line breaks will increase. And there's some real positive knock-on consequences of this. So that's a bit of an overview. I'll hand over to James, who's going to talk about just what other unions are doing, and then we'll crack on with a bit more detail.
Cheers, Neil. James. Yeah, so as Neil mentioned, this discussion isn't just happening in Scotland. So World Rugby have issued something across the community games across the world that they are looking for unions to lower tackle height for the reasons just outlined above. So this has happened before. So there's been quite a few unions that have ran bits and pieces prior to this, which has given some really good data and information on the travel direction, and there's some real successes. So first of all, in France, which is probably the most high-profile trial so far, they reduced the tackle height to waist and below, and that resulted in a 64% reduction in head-on-head contacts and a 23% reduction in concussions overall. South Africa did a similar trial around their university game, again reducing in a 30% reduction in concussions. So as you can see, the travel direction is when you lower the tackle, you lower the concussion rate, and this is something that we'll be researching as we go through the trial to then see the impact on the community game in Scotland. Around the world at the moment, New Zealand have just launched, as Neil mentioned, their trial, which is probably similar to ours in terms of sternum low, that belly tackle. And we are also working with other Six Nation countries as well. I know that England are quite far along, and Ireland and Wales are also well down the track with this. So this is a global thing to kind of make the game more appealing and safer to people across the world. So there's just a viable future for people in the game, and it's safer for everyone. So Sinky's just going to talk a bit about a bit deep in the rationale. So
yeah, thanks, James. So I think really just to expand on what you covered there, the main reason for the change and the law trial is just to reduce the chances of that shared headspace. So by lowering the tackle, straight away we're going to do that. Some of the facts and figures very much kind of lean towards doing that as well. So about 74% of all concussions come from the tackle area, and then a large percentage, so 70% of concussions come from the tackler. So again, by just reducing the chances of players being in that same headspace, which some of the images will show, in fact the image on screen right now, you can see that with a high tackle we've got a head-on-head collision. So the risk of concussion with that type of example is 4.2 times higher when the tackler's heads are coming together. So it's a relatively simple rationale. And as you said, it's not just Scottish rugby that are rolling this out. It's been done across the world.
And I think the positive signs are that there has been trial before, and as you were saying there, both you saying that there's been significantly positive impacts on the game. I think it's also fair to say that this is still a trial, and we're still going to learn a lot from it globally. We know that when it comes to the tackle area, that it isn't just the head-on-heads that cause concussion. And I think in the FAQs that we're getting and questions, people are saying, well, is this not going to lead to more head-on-knee, head-on-hip concussions? Now, ultimately, we'll find out more information as we go through the trial. However, in the French trial, certainly, yes, there was an increase in tackles made beneath their waist, naturally, because you're focusing on the effort, but they didn't find a substantial amount of increased concussions in that area. So that's going to be a key focus of this trial, is to see whether we do get those reductions in concussions, which will be a really positive impact. But we'll also be keeping an acute eye on the whole tackle area to see if there's any unintended consequences. And that'll be done through some partnership working with some university partners and World Rugby in research. So yeah, thanks Sinclair for that. And I think sanctions, certainly more information to come out about this and through our roadshows that we're going to run in May and June. But the sanctions, this is the so what? So if a player tackles above, that's below sternum maximum height, what's going to happen? Rest assured, we're not going to be giving out red cards for a tackle that is a chest high tackle, and be left with two players aside by the end of a game. We're very much going to take the approach here that the current head contact process, so anything in that neck and head area, will be where yellow red cards will certainly come in. Anything between our current height and below sternum will be penalty, and that's what we'll be looking at. Obviously, we'll be having an empathetic view on that in our game, especially at the start, to ensure that we can educate players on the pitch and match officials and spectators. But penalty above, and we need to go quite strong with a penalty, because in order to get a change in player behaviour, we have to sanction high tackle rates. Otherwise, we won't get that lowering of the tackle. So yeah, head contact process will come in for anything above that shoulder area. Everything to do with mitigation will be taken into account from match officials, and I think certainly our feeling is that we all just need to have patience with everyone in the game as we head into next season, and referees, players, coaches won't get this right in the first week of pre-season. It's going to take a while, and that feedback we got from France was very much, it will take a couple of months for this to become second nature and to be ingrained in our game. But more information to come out about sanctions in a moment, and we've got some clips to show, James.
We do indeed. So what you can see, and we'll be playing as we're talking, are just a few good examples of tackling, what we're looking for. So these are really good examples of low tackle, of and let's be honest, these are things that happen in our game all the time at the moment. So we're not envisaging a massive step change, but this is a tackle we see all the time, kind of targeting below the ball, around the belly, and that's common language that's used at the moment, but we're going to be having a real emphasis on making sure that's across all aspects of the game. So I think we did a wee bit of analysis on the game last season, and probably about, 7-16% of tackles maybe above the ball. All we want to do is nudge that down again, because those 7-16% represent that 4.2% times more likely to have a concussion. So that was a good example of what a tackle could look like. Again, coaches amongst you will look at ways to even improve that even more. And this is an example of tackles we want to kind of get away from. So as you see on the screen here, we've got a tackle where both the tackler and the ball player are upright. So as you can see there from the circle, that the actual shared head space means that it's head on head. So what the new law will encourage is for the tackler to dip and get underneath the ball and to make a really effective tackle that way. So we're still envisaging really strong tackles. We're not looking to completely depower the tackle. We're looking to just refine technique and look at even better ways to get a ball carrier to ground and to kind of play the game that way.
And I think a good example in that situation there was that tackle situation there was actually not that effective.
Yeah.
The ball carrier was able to get away from the tackler. It wasn't brought to ground, and therefore wasn't that effective. So, and we'll be using clips like this as we go through the process. But yeah, good examples.
So one of the questions that will come up is what happens to double tackles as well. So we've talked about the main law. So double tackles, as we can see from here, I'll just play the video, will be allowed this season. Okay, but again, under the same kind of maximum tackle height here. So as you can see from this video, number 4 and the second player are both below the ball, are both below the sternum area. So you can still have double tackles, and that is something that's still permitted, and that's going to be quite an effective defensive tool. We're going to look at another example now. Okay, and this is one that's probably going to be looked to be blown up for sanctions this year, is where the first player is low, but as you can see there, the second player is going above the ball, even though they're hinged, but they're putting their head in that kind of danger area and that shoulder towards the head there as well. So again, it's going to be something that coaches and players will need to work on in terms of arrival height and looking at how we approach the tackle. But there's double tackles are going to be permitted, but as you can see there, this emphasis is still that same rationale of trying to make sure that shoulders and heads are kept away from the head of the ball carrier.
I think on the double tackle as well, having the defence on the right side, so obviously if you have 2 tacklers coming in on the same side, you then there's probably an increased risk of head knocks there again. So we probably just need to be quite cautious around the way that we're coaching the double tackle, especially with them both being under sternum height. We don't want to be up in the risk there.
Yeah, definitely. I think this area across the global law trials that are taking place is an area where different countries are doing different things, and we will look at this keenly. What the second arriving player can do, and we'll see in a moment, is go for ball. So they can go for ball and try to rip the ball or hold the ball up. But yes, as James said, both or any tacklers, it could be 3, would be tough. But certainly double tackle will have to be below sternum height, and that's going to be critical moving forward.
Okay, and this final set of examples we've got around that arriving player, and we're also going to look at pick and goes, and I know that's an area of the game that probably the mechanics are a wee bit different, so we've kind of looked at that in a bit of detail and coming up with the laws. So with the arriving player example, as Neil mentioned, this is something that's going to be permitted, so do you want to talk us through the video?
Yeah, so this is a good example. I mean, first of all, we've got a lock tackling a 9 here. So one of the interesting points is people have commented, how is a tall 6'4", 6'5" player going to tackle a 9? Well, we've got a good example there. He can do it. Obviously, physical competence is going to come into it, but it can be done. Now, in this situation here, when the video paused, there is where the second arriving player, has attempted to go for ball, decided that ball wasn't playable, and backed off, and that will still be allowed this coming season, as long as that second player isn't making an attempt to tackle and putting a shoulder on, which would obviously, going back to head on head, would put a high velocity situation in head on head, which would potentially be a concussion risk. They're allowed to go for ball. Now, the reason why that is being allowed is the velocity of this contact area has now reduced significantly. The primary tackler has slowed the ball carrier down, so they're not at full pace. Therefore, the risk of a head-on-head collision has reduced, and that's why this has been allowed. And this is the same situation in New Zealand as well. So a couple of things in that clip. Really good clip, and a good tackle execution from the primary tackler, and a good decision from the second player there.
I think just on that one, Neil, as part of the new blueprint, there is going to be a physical cog coming, and that's going to focus on fundamental movement. So you talked about the lock getting into a position to make an effective tackle. As part of the physical cog, we'll look at things like hinging and how we can improve that through our generic coaching. There's lots of opportunities to do that. So,
excellent. And the final video example we've got is around the pick and go. So this is an area we've kind of decided we're still going to allow tackles as they are to exist around the pick and go. So we can see an example there from the base of a scrum, base of a ruck. A player can pick and engage the defence, and actually the defence can tackle it as they have been doing all season. And the rationale is because of the velocities involved from a crouch position, only really going a couple of metres, these kind of high velocity impacts, which the tackle trial are aiming to reduce, maybe don't apply as much here as well. And what we'll probably see in most situations is that, especially here, the ball carrier was actually hinged quite low. So for the defence to quite get under is actually quite a difficult skill. But the defence, one of the defenders was actually upright. So the principle of shared headspace isn't in play there. And I think that's a key thing.
It's not often that as a defender, you're attempting to make a high tackle in that situation anyway. So your most effective tackle is always going to be low anyway. So
So the key thing there, the only sanctions in place here will be the high tackle frameworks, which are currently in place at the moment. So tackles around the chest and sternum are okay, but any contact to the head will still be subject to the same high tackle frameworks, as is the case at the moment. Again, something that we've looked at other unions and chatted in depth with internally and externally as well. So again, this will be subject to the trial to look at how this plays out over the coming seasons as well.
And on that clip as well, just a question that comes in quite regularly is, what about a maul? Could a maul be set up from there? Yes. Once that situation occurs, yes, there could be a maul set up from the attacking team's possession. They could set up a maul from that situation as they could from a line out. So yeah, some little nitty gritty things and little details to get through, but that would be allowed. That was certainly through the consultation, something that the game wanted to continue. Great. Okay.
And basically, this trial again it's something that the whole game will need to be involved with as well. So ways that we can, basically the public can help as well, is please be patient. This is probably one of the biggest changes to the game since the scrum engagement sequence a few years back, but this probably has a wider ramification. So we found in France it took time to settle in. So as with any change, there'll be adaptation, embedding, then behaviours becoming the norm, and it will take time. There's a few things we're looking to do, aren't we, during that period to kind of work with the game?
Yeah, definitely. I think during the game we're going to be running lots of workshops in CPD, but also running sessions specifically for league coaches and match officials to get them together. We'll have resources for clubs for their spectators, as well as doing like a tackle cam weekly highlight of good and bad practice. But as James says, we'll need to be patient and take time. But let's remember the benefits of it. The benefits are reduction in head-on-head contacts, less concussions is the intended impact, which hopefully means that the game is going to be accessible to more. In France, they've actually got an increase in participation, not just down to this, but other things. But again, we hope that this can act as a catalyst to get more people in our game, which I'm sure everyone will agree is a positive outcome.
I think they're one of the few unions in the world bucking the trend of team participations dropping. Actually, they're actually increasing numbers in the kind of male team sports. Referees, we're going to be working loads with referees basically from now right through the coming seasons. So please be patient with referees as well. This for them to kind of arbiter this will be a bit of a step change. So again, patience and empathy for them as well. And sidelines as well is going to be a massive one, isn't it, for those people watching on the side?
Absolutely. I think with any change, again, you've touched on already, but it just takes time. So having an understanding for everybody's going to help. So get as much as you can. Like Neil said, there's going to be lots of workshops, lots of content online. So read up on it and support it.
And finally, if you click on that, I'm pointing as if there's a QR code here. We have a tackle hub which has more videos, more examples, which will be supplemented by workshops, physical resources, training activities, refereeing activities. This is something that we really want everyone to get involved with as well. And again, if there's any questions whatsoever at all, get in touch with us on Twitter at the Scott Rugby Coach handle. Drop us a line at training.education@siu.org.uk. But hopefully it's a real positive step for the game.